Please welcome to the stage Senior Solutions Consultant Dano Golden and Program Manager Ben Azenpour.
AI isn't just coming to capital planning. It's already here. The organizations that learn to use it well, these are the organizations that are going to pull ahead. And not just incrementally, significantly. My name is Dano Golden. Thank you for joining me today. Very excited to be here in Vancouver with you. Not only is it a beautiful backdrop for the summit, it's also a place near and dear to my heart because this is where I was born and raised. Also joining me is Ben, who's going to walk you through the solution and show it to you live in action. But I want to preface this by saying you already saw what our future vision for Copperleaf looks like. And that came through the product roadmap session yesterday with Mark Lamoureux. And what we're going to be talking about today is what we're calling Copperleaf Foresight AI. It's the next generation of the Copperleaf solution, and it's available now. Now, some quick introductions. I work closely with clients across the infrastructure space, from transportation to oil and gas to utilities. And I work with them and really help them maximize the value that they get out of their capital plans by using Copperleaf. And Ben here brings a very specific technical and delivery lens to the work that we're doing. And he's one of our program managers, and today we'll be walking you through exactly what Foresight looks like in action. Now, together, we've had the privilege of seeing firsthand how the right tools can take an organization from reactive planning to truly strategic decision-making. And what we'll walk you through today includes both why Foresight matters, as well as how exactly to use it within your own organization. So let's set the stage here, because most of you in this room are here today because you've already made significant investment into improving your capital planning process. You're making more defensible decisions, and you've put in the work. You've built the data models, you have the value frameworks, and you've set up the governance structures. But let me ask you this. How much of your time, or your team's time, is still being spent on some of the manual work that goes into building the plan? And that's what we're here to talk about today. Not optimizing your capital plans, because you're already doing that, but optimizing the journey to get you there. Faster, cleaner, and with less friction at every step along the way. That's the promise of Foresight AI. So, what exactly is Foresight AI? At its core, it's AI that's embedded directly into your planning process and workflows. It's not another solution that lives somewhere else and you need to context switch into. It's right there inside of Copperleaf. Foresight comes with several AI agents, each designed to help with a specific, high-value part of the planning process. We're going to introduce 4 of those to you today. The first 2, Foresight Augment and Foresight Analyze, are already available. And the next 2, Foresight Capture and Foresight Automate, are being shipped out in our next release, 26R1. So I'm going to go through and give you a tour, and again, you'll get the demonstration from Ben in just a few moments. But first, let's meet the agents. Now, I'm going to pause here because I want to bring attention to the word agents, because it's what's doing the real lifting in this context. We're not talking about a chatbot that gives you generic answers. It is AI that has been configured specifically to your organization, your criteria, your processes and terminology and planning context, and allowing it to even take action on your behalf in Copperleaf. So, going into the first 2 will be the first that are available within 25R2, and then we'll move into those that are coming with our 26R1 release. First up is Foresight Analyze. And this is the agent that ensures your investment valuations are of the highest quality before submitting the investment for review. So here's the challenge and solves. In many organizations, the investment creation, or rather the investments in general, can vary a lot in terms of their quality. You're going to have teams that are in the solution all the time that know the business case, they fill out the fields they need to, and they put together great work. But some of the teams that maybe they're busier or they don't live in the solution every day, that's where we start to see a lot of variance in the investment quality. And that variance is something that we usually don't catch until it's being submitted to review, or we're going to optimize and we're starting to think about, is our data ready for the optimization? Foresight Analyze changes that by running a review against your organization's specific criteria, both qualitative and quantitative, and it flags issues before submission, telling you exactly what needs to change and why. And the result? Fewer rejections, faster approvals, and higher quality investments across the entire portfolio. Think of it like having a senior planner that's reviewing every single one of your investments at scale, every time, automatically. Next up, we have Foresight Augment. And Foresight Augment is something that's particularly close to my heart because as a solutions consultant, I spend a lot of time upskilling new users and explaining to some of our newer clients exactly how to use Copperleaf. And beyond that, every organization has some additional planning context that tends to live in the minds of the people. So when you get into the system, you might be thinking, what does long-term planning mean in the context of my business? What's a best practice example of an IT investment? And how would I even go about creating an investment in the solution in the first place? And traditionally, it means finding a subject matter expert on your team, digging through help guides or job aids, what have you, and spending time to find that answer. With Augment, it layers all of that context on top of the core Copperleaf online help, and it provides a chat interface for you to work directly with inside of the solution. So that means a new user can come in and ask the question, how do I build an IT investment, and can you provide an example for me to refer to? Or what does this field even mean in the context, again, of our business and for this type of project? And what you get is real, tailored, relevant answers. And from my own experience, the impact on productivity and onboarding time has really been significant. Now, we're going to shift gears and look at some of the agents that are shipping in 26R1. And the first one is Foresight Capture. Now, investment creation tends to be a higher friction part of the planning process. And this is especially true for newer users or those who aren't in the system in their day-to-day. The reality is your people know the projects. They understand the business case, but putting that all into the system in a way that is structured appropriately, you have your alternatives and your forecast built in a way that stands up and is ready for optimization, that's where a lot of time is being spent. Foresight Capture turns that into a conversation. Foresight is there with you, guiding you through the investment creation process, looking at your plain language descriptions and inputs, and it'll ask you follow-up questions. It even makes suggestions about different field values that you should be entering. And ultimately, it's ensuring that the output of the investment you create is aligned with your organization's standards. Again, especially powerful for those newer users who aren't in the system all the time. It's really helping hold their hand through that investment creation process. Now, the final agent to introduce today is Foresight Automate. And Foresight Automate actually takes things a little bit further because it brings us now into the world of workflow automation. The reality is that there's a lot of repetitive tasks that need to be done when we're building up plans that contain hundreds or thousands of similar projects. It could be simple field values needing to change based on specific rules, or maybe we route decisions through the same path every single time. Right now, in order to handle these situations, you might need to work with your IT department, have them help out, or build a project with a system integrator, and all of that takes time. With Foresight Automate, you can create instruction sets in plain language and deploy agents into the solution that can handle the work automatically. No coding required, no waiting for IT to help, and no building a project with a system integrator. You define exactly what the agent should do, which tools it has access to, and when it should act. And this really allows the team time and space freed up so that they can focus more on the pieces that really require human touch, right? Those judgment-intensive decisions that need to be made. All right, so that's the overview. Now what I want to do is let you have a view of each of these agents in action. And so Ben is going to walk you through each of these in a live demonstration. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Azenpour.
Thank you very much, Dano. So we designed Foresight with the Copperleaf user journey in mind. And that user journey starts with the first login, the first time they raise an investment, when they're ready finally to submit that investment for budget consideration. And then over time, as the user becomes more and more experienced with Copperleaf, they become that Copperleaf capital planning expert, probably maybe in an administrative role where they start thinking about streamlining their workflows and processes. So over the next few minutes, I'll show how Foresight can help with each step of that journey. Let's begin. To start our journey, let's assume that I'm a new user. I just got my login credentials, and I'm excited to get started. At this point, I'm simply browsing the application, clicking on the different pages to get familiar with the application. But while doing so, I know that I have a 24/7 assistant in Foresight Augment beside me who can answer my questions along the way. When I go to the milestones page, Foresight Augment is there to tell me what a milestone is, what it does, and how it should be configured. When I'm looking for that best practice IT investment example, Foresight Augment can provide me that example, but it can also elaborate on the details that make a great quality investment in Copperleaf. So as I continue to navigate, I get to the investment details page, I scroll down to the investment stages, and I see some unfamiliar terminology: long-term planning, short-term planning. What do they mean? In the past, I may have to reach out to a more experienced colleague. I may have to reference an external document, or in some cases, I may even need to wait for an upcoming training session. Now, all I need to do is ask Augment. Augment, though, is extremely powerful. What makes it powerful is that it's not just limited to the core documentation that Copperleaf comes with. It is very easy for your organization to provide it your own customer-specific details so that Augment is aware of it to provide more targeted and more relevant responses. So going back to our example here, technically investment stages do have a general meaning. But what we found is that each organization refines those definitions to match their own investment governance processes. So with that in mind, let's demo Foresight Augment from the perspective of an end user, and also from the perspective of an administrator who may want to add the customer-specific details to it. Again, just to set the tone, I'm a new user. I've come to Copperleaf. On the investment details page, I scroll down to the investment stages. I see some unfamiliar terminology. What do? I simply ask Foresight Augment. So let's take a look. You can open Foresight Augment from anywhere in the application, and you can communicate it with it in plain language. Here you go. I ask the question, wait a few seconds for the response, and there it is. Now, in this case, it provided me that generic definition. But I do know that we have a more specific definition for this in my organization. As a matter of fact, the agent even is telling me that maybe there's a document out there that explains these terms better. So I contact my administrator, and my administrator now wants to add those additional details to Foresight Augment. So I'm going to put my administrator hat on, and we'll see how easy it is to add that additional context. So something new in 26R1, of course, the agents. You go to configuration, settings, agents, and as an administrator, in this case, all I need to do is upload a document that explains these terms. Here I have in a Word document, there's one paragraph per each of these investment stages explaining what they are, particularly paying attention to long-term planning. In my organization, that means that the investment must have a Class 5 estimate, it must have been approved by the area manager, And now it's available to be considered as part of the 5-year plan. So very specific definitions for long-term planning in my organization. But what is important is that as the administrator, all I need to do is grab this plain text document and upload it to Foresight Augment. No coding required, no custom extensions required. So let's take a look. I'll just scroll down a little bit, and we get to this section called Knowledge, and I simply upload this document. We'll just grab it over, paste it in there. How easy was that? From this point on, Foresight Augment is automatically rewired to have this additional context available and to be able to provide that context in its future responses. So let's validate this. Again, I'll switch back to becoming an investment owner, and I'll ask the same question. What does long-term planning represent in Copperleaf? And you see, just like that, the customer-specific context is now available in the response. So hopefully you can see how easy it is to use Foresight Augment, but also to configure it for your own specific use case so that it can produce very targeted and very relevant responses, and to ultimately fast-track the onboarding process for your users. All right, I think that's the first phase of our journey. Let's move on to the second phase. Now I'm ready to actually enter an investment. For that, we have Foresight Capture. Just like the legacy capture offering in the previous versions, the 26R1 Foresight Capture also provides a step-by-step investment entry guide to ensure a consistent and complete investment entries by your users. This is particularly helpful to new and casual users with little to no training. The guide just kind of steps them through the investment entry process. But 26R1, Foresight Capture, also provides agents that can further support the user in each of these steps. I need my investment description vetted? Not a problem, simply ask. I need the investment details validated? Not a problem, simply ask. A very common use case, though, is the value model selection step. You can imagine as a new user coming to this application, I could feel a little bit overwhelmed with all the options that are in front of me. Which value models do I pick? Which ones are the right ones? Did I pick too many? Did I pick too few? Questions like that could be a little bit concerning to me. Well, we have an agent that can help with that. In this case, what the agent would do is grab all the information I've entered so far in the draft, like the investment details, the name, the investment type, and so on. And then on top of it, it also grabs the information for the value models, the descriptions. More importantly, perhaps, the best use case examples from your organization. And then also it will apply the administrative controls on top of it. How many value models do we want to see per investment? Which value models are compatible? Which ones are not compatible? Which ones are mandatory? So it grabs all those information, and then it puts them together, analyzes the context, and replies back with the recommended value models for this investment, along with the justification for its reasoning. So let's take a look at this example. To set the context again, here I have an inefficient aging boiler for which I'm raising an investment, and I'm proposing to replace it. So I simply ask, which value models should I pick? The agent in the back, like I said, it's looking at the draft information that I put in. On top of it, it's looking at the value model descriptions and best use examples, applying the constraints, and it comes back with the recommendations. First, it talks about the mandatory models, what are they and why, and then it recommends the value models for this investment. For example, in this example, it said heat rate impact. I'm going from an inefficient boiler to a more efficient one. Presumably, there's going to be heat rate benefits. Financial benefits and costs. Again, presumably, this newer boiler will have less OpEx maintenance. Environmental benefit, the new boiler will likely be, will have less carbon emissions. So again, the agent looks through it all. it recommends the value models along with the justification of why it picked the value model. So in Foresight Capture, you have the step-by-step guide along with the agents for each step of the guide that take the guessing out of the investment entry process. And that is extremely helpful, particularly to new or casual users in Copperleaf. All right, I think we're ready to move on to the next agent, or the next phase of my journey. I am ready to submit my investment for budgetary consideration. This is a proud moment for me. I want to make sure that all the details are correct, that I modeled everything correctly. I don't have any mistakes in this. Obviously, this is going to go to the leadership level, but more importantly, I should say most importantly, ultimately, whatever I put into the system will determine our capital decisions. So I want to make sure I get everything correct. And this is where Foresight Analyze can come in to help me. This agent evaluates the quality of my investment both based on quantitative and qualitative metrics, and it suggests corrections where needed. Let's go through an example here. On the left-hand side of every investment, you will have the Foresight Analyze option. When you click on it, on that page, you will see the latest Foresight Analyze review results. Now, as an investment owner, obviously I want to strive to have all green check marks. In this example, I ran 12 criteria. Most of them came back green, which is excellent. I had some warnings, and I also had some items that were marked red. These are the items that I particularly should pay attention to and address before I submit my investment. So let's dive a little bit deeper in this. As I mentioned, it can do some qualitative checks. It read my investment description and it said, hey, maybe boiler needs work. Maybe we should provide more details. What exactly needs work? You can calibrate the level of detail that you would expect in your organization for investments in the agent. But in this example, it qualitatively looked at that and said, hey, maybe you're lacking some details. It can also do quantitative checks. My value to cost ratio, is it valid? Did I plan my value models way out of whack and I have an outlier now, perhaps? So it can do those quantitative checks. But remember, Copperleaf is all about value over time as well. So dates play a very crucial role in Copperleaf, especially when it comes to optimization. So now, Foresight Analyze can also validate the date inputs. Now, in this example, what it's saying is, my first shiftable forecast date is before my start date. In layman's term, as it explains, it's saying, hey, I've planned some discretionary, non-committed spend before I even start my investment. Does it make sense? So it kind of raises that flag. But I should also emphasize this. You're not limited to the 12 rules that I've modeled here. In your organization, you can go through the rules. If you see that doesn't make sense in your workflow, in your organization, you can edit them, you can remove them, you can add to them as you wish. And I'll show in just a second how simple that is. So by no means you're bound to what is being displayed here. OK. So in the background, I've gone and addressed all the shortcomings here. I've also gone ahead and added a second alternative to be considered for my investment. But before I run investment or Foresight Analyze again, my administrator wants to add an additional rule to be checked as part of Foresight Analyze. So again, I'll put my administrator hat on, and we'll take a look at that. So just as before, I go to the agent settings page. I scroll down, find Foresight Analyze agent. And in this case, I want to add an additional rule for checking the investment name quality. You know, generally, in Copperleaf, we recommend that your investment name should reflect a problem statement, and your alternative names should reflect your proposed solutions. For example, aging boiler, inefficient boiler, is a problem statement. Replacing the boiler, upgrading the boiler, is a solution statement. So to configure the agent, all I have to do is plain language, is just type what I just said. We just type it in and say, this is what I expect for the investment name, and that's it. And now all I have to do is copy that and append it to the list of instructions that I have in the agent. So we'll take a look at that. I scroll down, I get to the instruction set, simply copy that new condition, come all the way down, and append it to the bottom. No coding required, no custom extensions required. Simply describe what you want in text, and you can put it in there. All right, I'll switch back to becoming an investment owner again. And to save some time, I already ran Foresight Analyze. You see I have all these beautiful check marks now, which is fantastic. As I mentioned, I addressed all the deficiencies that had been raised before. I also see that new criterion that my administrator just added. In this case, for me, it's throwing a warning because if you look at my investment name, boiler replacement, it's more of a solution statement than a problem statement. So it's giving me a warning. I can very easily go ahead and fix this. If I scroll down a little bit lower, what you'll also find is that all the checks were repeated for both of the alternatives. So Foresight Analyze is not limited to just the recommended alternative. Essentially, any alternative that can be picked by the optimizer and therefore impact your decision making is checked by Foresight Analyze. And the user can go ahead and make sure everything is correct before they submit their investment. So to summarize, with Foresight Analyze, your end users will produce high-quality investments across the board, and that will then ensure a more seamless optimization, which will ultimately yield much improved capital investment decisions in your organization. Okay, now the last part of our journey. I have used Copperleaf for a while now. I've become that Copperleaf expert, that capital planning expert on Copperleaf. Perhaps I'm in an administrative role now. I start thinking about areas where we could streamline our workflows, our processes. For example, that Foresight Analyze agent that we just looked at, what if I wanted to run automatically every time the investment is saved or updated? I don't want the user to go manually click on run review every time. Well, we can do that with Foresight Automate. What if I want to initiate a workflow automatically to send an approved forecast for reapproval if it is edited at any point? With Foresight Automate, we can do that, not a problem. So let's take a look at that example. All I need to do is tell the system which event will trigger the agent who will then automate that task. So here I'm saying every time there's a forecast update event, initiate the forecast reapproval workflow. In 2 seconds, maybe 3 clicks, we did something that would have taken maybe weeks of custom extensions development time. Now we were able to wire it all together just like that. So to emphasize this, when you're working with Foresight Automate, you always need to define, okay, what is the triggering event? And when that event happens, what do I want the agent to automate? But wiring it up is as simple as that. A couple of clicks, and you're set. We'll take a look at a slightly more complicated example as well. Let's say in my organization, we maintain an Excel spreadsheet where we map the latest risk owners to the risk types. We know organizations have turnovers, people move around, so we maintain that list. And I want an agent now to be able to always make sure that the risks reflect the latest risk owners. So all I need to do is grab that spreadsheet, feed it back to my agent, upload it to the agent, just as we saw before, nothing crazy there. And then in plain language, I need to tell the agent what to do. Look up the table, look up the risk type, find the risk owner, and then if necessary, update the risk entity with the correct risk owner. Very simple instructions, no coding required, very simple to set up. And next thing I need to do is tell it, okay, when to run this agent. Run that agent every time I have a risk entity that's updated. So every time there's an update, it checks it. If it needs to, it'll update the risk owner. Here on this side, I already went ahead and changed the risk type from safety to financial risk. And if you look at the Excel spreadsheet, the risk owner name should be now mapped to Ben, myself. So we'll just update, and the risk owner changed from Lawrence to Ben. So how long did that take us? 10 seconds? 4 clicks? You can imagine in the past, if you wanted to do something like this, you would have to go through our custom extensions. It would take probably weeks of custom extension development time to do something like this. OK, to summarize then, Foresight provides benefits to your organization in every step of your Copperleaf user journey. Augment is there to provide faster onboarding for the new users. Foresight Capture is there to take the guessing out of investment entry. Foresight Analyze is there to make sure all the investments that ultimately impact your portfolio optimization are of high quality and are modeled correctly. And Foresight Automate is there to make sure to enable you to automate certain tasks, improve your processes, and streamline your workflows. So I encourage all of you to think about how you could leverage Foresight in your organizations to, like I said, optimize your journey. And please provide us that feedback as well. We're very keen to learn about that feedback as well and improve this in future iterations too. I think with that, I'll pass it back to Dano for his closing remarks.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Ben. It's really good to see these things live in action. Of course, we can talk about it all day, but at the end of the day, the rubber meets the road when we see it happening live and when it's applied into your own environments as well. Now, I want to take us back to where we started, because again, you've already invested in capital planning the right way. You have the value frameworks, the optimization engine, and you understand how to make defensible decisions. Foresight AI is about removing the friction between where you are today and where you want to be. It's about making sure that every investment that enters your planning process is of high quality, that your users have the context they need to be enabled the very first time they enter the solution. And it promises that your governance structures are not taken away. The reality is that this AI works with your people, not around them. It preserves the human judgment by ensuring that every decision it makes is visible, auditable, and if necessary, requires your approval. This governance that you've built really only gets stronger by letting Foresight help to automate some of it. Now that brings us towards the end of our demonstration and getting close to the end of Summit here. So if what you've seen today resonates or has piqued your interest, the best next step is to book a discussion. We want to get your hands on the tool, and we want to understand your specific environment and your challenges that people face day to day, and we'd love to show you how Foresight AI can start to map to those challenges. So don't leave Vancouver without having that discussion booked. Find your account managers, or if you've got a little bit of time, the demo den is still open. But we are very, very excited to continue this discussion, so please don't be shy. And with that, I want to thank you all so much for being here. I'm Dano. Ben is right here. We'll be around for questions, but please enjoy the rest of your stay here in Vancouver. Thank you.
Thank you.